Hello, boys and girls. It is another edition of the Three Man Weave. I'm Max McCombs. As always, I'm joined by Mike Norman and Nathan Brown. And just a little while ago, we had witnessed one hell of a good basketball game here at Assembly Hall. It was a 75-70 win for Indiana over Michigan State. And just on a pure level of enjoying good basketball, this is about as fun a game as I think we've had the pleasure of covering this season. IU got back out to its customary pace. It was a much faster paced game for the most part than what we've been seeing recently, and I think that largely benefited IU. It slowed down a little at the end, but they really sort of gutted out a victory. Guys, what was your takeaway from this?
I mean, from the opening tip-off, the very first play of the game, Victor Oladipo really set the tone defensively for IU. Very first play of the game, stripped Brandon Dawson and took it to the other end for a flush. And, ever since that play, you could kind of tell that IU was just locked in defensively. Showed the rest of the game. They allowed Michigan State to score 70 points on the night. Only shot 45% of the field, Michigan State did. So, they had a fairly good shooting game, but if you look at some of the other things, IU forced Michigan State into 19 turnovers. I think that's really where this game was won. And, of course, IU did benefit from a couple of calls. I would call them good calls, getting a couple fouls there late at the end that kind of changed the game.
Like you said, Max, I really felt like this was the first game in a long time that felt like a game played at IU's pace. I felt like, with those turnovers, they really did have, control of the game. There's a lot of that transition play. Several times where Oladipo was able to, pickpocket a Michigan State player and go down the other end for a dunk or feed it off to one of his other teammates for a layup or something like that. You just really felt like, this is the type of game that IU really excels at. Even though they only won by 5 points, you never really felt like they were out of control. I mean, the game did get down to 1 point several times in the second half, but you always felt like they were still in control.
I think IU by no means played a perfect game. They played the style of the game is the style they wanted to play, and that was, I think, the key to their win, was just doing what they wanted to do. Did they do it perfectly? No, absolutely not. I mean, they got to the free throw line a decent amount, but only shot 65% from the line. Granted, they did a very, very good job. I think one of the understated keys to this win was Michigan State only attempted 6 free throws, made 5 of them, granted, but that 5 for 6 mark is identical to what Cody Zeller did all by himself. And perhaps most amazingly to me, Michigan State did not get to the free throw line in the second half. That's pretty remarkable, especially considering how slowed down and how much of a grinded-out dogfight kind of game this became near the end.
That's huge, Max, because especially if you look at the players that Michigan State has down low, these are big, bruising guys that have the ability to somewhat push Cody Zeller and Christian Watford around, and they did at times during the game, but Zeller and Watford responded well, and it certainly wasn't the easiest game for these guys, being Zeller and Watford, but you gotta like what you saw if you're a Hoosier fan, and just the ability for them to respond to that. And you know what? If you look at their lines, didn't have the most points. Watford finished with 12, Zeller with 9, but they affected the game tremendously, especially on defense.
I think another way that I saw that, this maybe wasn't their best performance, but a game where the pace really dictated what they could do. There were a string of a couple turnovers in the first half. They had 10 total in the first half, which is, of course, not the best stat in the world, but where they were just kind of sloppy. They lost the ball on several inbounds passes, a couple from Watford, I think. You could tell, this was a solid 40 minutes of basketball from IU. Not flawless by any means, but definitely, I think, better as a whole than what we've seen in the past several games.
And Tom Crean always says, after a lot of games, actually he didn't say it after this one, but I think he sort of implied it, that he doesn't want his team playing perfect right now. He wants there to be things they can correct, because that means they have room to grow later down the road. So, I mean, I think in general, most of the takeaways from this game have to be fairly positive.
Yeah, a couple things that you can look at, things that IU does need to improve on, would be that turnover margin. And,
that's fair.
As one thing, they did force 19 turnovers, but they did turn the ball over 16 times themselves. Michigan State's a very good defensive team themselves, but you have to kind of worry. We have seen recently IU turning the ball a little bit, or turning the ball over more a little bit, and it's nitpicking type things like that. But if you do get careless in a game like this, few bad breaks going the other way, it could change the outcome of it. So.
Yeah.
If you want to fine tune one thing, definitely have to be a little bit more careful with the ball.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this game was close, fair up until right near the end. It was a 1-point game at one point, 71-70. Worth noting that for about the last 3.5 minutes, IU held Michigan State scoreless. That's a big deal. But going back to what you said about the turnovers, I agree. But my feeling in this game was it was sort of a different. The turnovers meant something different, whereas the last couple of games it was sloppy offense. I thought the defense, both teams were quite good today, and I mean because if you look for Michigan State of the turnovers they forced, they had 11 steals.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's somewhat an IU, but it means that they were being extremely aggressive on defense, and it panned out for them.
Yeah, a couple offensive fouls called against IU there too. That is a product of being aggressive on the offensive end. So sometimes that will lie a little bit, but I agree with you. They have cleaned up the offense, and offense looked crisp today. And especially in the first half, they scored 44 points in the first half. Really got it going from the field, and ended up being the difference. And IU hit their free throws, and it put the game away.
Yeah, I mean, and just going back to the first half real quick, I was astounded by how balanced the effort was. At halftime, I believe IU had 2 players with 8 points, 2 players with 7 points, and 2 players with 6 points. Yep. That kind of balance is exactly what you want to see out of a team, I think. And then at the same time, though, in the second half, some of those guys fell back, and then Oladipo just took over the game. Wouldn't you say so?
Yes, he did. He had a pretty good first half performance. He had, I think, 4 steals, 2 block shots. Ended up with 6 steals and 3 block shots, both career highs. But you could really tell that he was IU's floor general out there. He was several times, taking the ball up, even as acting as a point guard, controlling the pace, pushing the ball, playing very, at a very high level, as he would say, on both ends of the court. You could just really tell that he has really come a long way from where he was at this point in the season last year, and Crean noted that in the press conference afterwards.
And they're definitely going to need Oladipo's presence. Well, we will be returning to the site of Oladipo's highest career point total. If you guys remember, last year he scored 23 points against Purdue in Mackey Arena. So we will be returning there on Wednesday as IU gets ready to take on Purdue in West Lafayette on Wednesday night. Catch that game on the Big Ten Network, and then I believe the game starts at 8:30. 8:30 tip-off.
And we get to drive home afterwards. Yes. Jealous? I know you are.
So it will be a good time, but hope you enjoyed today's game. IU beats Michigan State Spartans 75-70 here at Assembly Hall. For everybody here at the IDS, for Nathan Brown, for Max McCombs, Michael Norman, we'll see you guys next time, and thanks for joining us here on the 3-Man Weave. You can check out all Hoosier sports news and IU basketball news on our website at the IDS. But thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.